Hello, good evening. Hello, welcome to Matter. My name is Stephen Collins. I'm the CEO here, and this is the latest installment of Tales from the Trenches, which is an event that we produce with Pritzker Group Venture Capital and Outcome Health. So Pritzker Venture Capital, for those of you who aren't familiar, is the largest venture fund that is based in the Midwest. They invest nationally, multi-stage, and have a growing number, up to now about a dozen health IT investments. Adam Coopersmith is in the house, and his partner leads all of the healthcare investment activities. So you should go talk to him if you're looking for dollars. Outcome Health is arguably the most interesting company in the Midwest, certainly the most interesting healthcare IT company that really brings educational materials and information to people at the point of care, started by Rishi, who is the CEO and our interviewer for the evening, and his partner Shraddha when they were undergraduates in college, and they've grown it into really truly an unbelievable success story in Chicago, and we're going to be hearing a lot more, I'm sure, about that company in the coming weeks and months and years as they take over the world. Our guest this evening and our marketing materials was called the most interesting doctor in the world. People ask me, is that true? And I can say with emphatically yes, but you'll make up your mind this evening. So Dr. Shlain has come in from California for this, so thank you very much for flying in. But he's a primary care physician in Silicon Valley. He is an entrepreneur who founded a company called HealthLoop. He's involved in sort of an array of other things that are interesting, and I'm sure that he will get into those. So if you want to ask a question tonight, we're using the same system that we always use. You go to matter.socialqa.com, and Rishi will curate the questions that you have. So with that, please welcome Rishi and Jordan.
So tonight's going to be a lot of fun. And I know that because when we were preparing for this, our mutual friend, Lyle, right here, told me Jordan, Dr. Shlain, is the most interesting man in the world, at least the most interesting doctor in the world, right? You know, the guy that plays that in the commercials, like, Jordan Shlain's the real life version of that. And to be honest, when Lyle first said it, like we were at this, I think, a networking event or something, and like, okay, yeah, we'll see, And then I'll be honest, I spent like half an hour with Jordan, and I can tell you it's absolutely true. I was there to learn about HealthLoop and all this stuff, and we only got through like the first 20 years of his life, and we are in for a treat. So thank you, Dr. Shlain, for coming in to visit us here at Matter from California. And I'm probably going to do less talking tonight than I've ever done in this session, because I'm so excited for you to hear as many of these stories as possible. But we're going to start early, as we always do. Tell us where you grew up, how you grew up, and some of the adventures you found yourself in.
So despite, well, thank you all for coming. I know it's not trivial to come out on a Wednesday night. I have the luxury of having two parents that grew up in the Midwest. So they were both born and raised in Michigan, in Detroit. And so the good Midwestern values followed our family to California. There's a lot of douchebags in California. And so just to be honest, so I do like people with ethics, morals, values, and integrity, which my parents both have and instilled in me. So I was born in San Francisco and grew up in San Francisco, still live there, have traveled a little bit around the world. And ever since my father was the son of an immigrant from Ukraine, and he was told by his parents, you can be whatever you want when you grow up as long as you're a doctor. And so he became a doctor. Good son of an immigrant. And then I grew up. Son, you can be whatever you want when you grow up, as long as you're a doctor. So I mean, that led
Basically done.
literally from age like 1 day to like 7 years old when we were in the operating room with my dad, and he would stand me up, and I'd be looking at these big wounds, and he'd traipse me through the hospital on rounds with him on Saturdays and Sundays, and so I got a full dose of what the life of a doctor and a surgeon was. So I was exposed fully. Like, you can't do that anymore. You can't walk into ORs with your kid, you know. But back in the day, it was a little bit more, a little different.
And now,
No HIPAA back then, by the way.
right.
The good old days.
So you know, you had so many things that you kind of started along the way, but I know you just told me about one of them in the 7th grade, kind of creating a little ice cream business at the school or making it better, and then a couple hacking stories in the 80s. Tell us a little bit about that, and then we'll zoom forward into Africa.
Okay. So the one thing that I kind of, my father would always say is, he said, you know, people think I'm a surgeon, but I'm really a problem solver. All day long, I solve problems. People come to me with the problem, and I solve problems. So they say, so being a doctor is really being a problem solver, and you have to solve other people's problems, and as complex as they are. And so, like, I kind of grew up with all these little my dad-isms, character is destiny, and you know, all these different little things. But in 7th grade, there was our middle school. It was when Devo came out with that song, that really popular Devo song. There was an ice cream stand, and it wasn't that busy, and me and a friend said, we need to get more revenue for the school. I think I was the treasurer. So he said, let's put some speakers near the ice cream stand, blast some Devo, and get a big sign, and like turn this into a lunchtime party, which we did, and we tripled the ice cream sales in 7th grade. But it was like there was a problem that, like, we were told we're not selling enough ice cream. So again, it was like, how do you solve this problem? And so I did solve that problem, and then.
Then you got a computer pretty early on?
And then, well, my father wrote a book called Art and Physics, Parallel Visions in Space-Time and Light, which is a very heady book where he does a basic analysis of every major discovery in physics and science and every major advancement in art movement. And he wanted to write a book, and everyone was like, dude, you're a surgeon. Anyway, he was a pretty intellectual guy, and he went on to write 3 other New York Times bestselling books, but he didn't want to write the book. And the Apple computer had just come out. And I said, Dad, I got to get an Apple computer. I want to learn how to program. I want to learn how to code. And he said, I'll get you one, but I understand there's a word processor on it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write this book by dictating in my car on the way to work every day and on the way back, and I'm going to give you these little cartridges, and you're going to type this book, 470 pages. And I got paid for it, but I know more about art history and the history of science and physics than I ever wanted to know. But I wound up really getting into computers, and I went to a computer camp to learn how to code in 1981 or 2, one of the first computer camps, and I immediately started liking games, these super silly games that compared to today. I was like, I want more games, but those games cost money. So then I was like, well, I wonder if I could hack the security code on this game, so then I could trade the game that I hacked and there were these computer conventions in San Francisco. So I wound up trading all these games with these guys, and then I would have all these floppy disks with games, and I would go to school and sell them, not realizing that there was copyright law infringement and all these other things. And I wound up having me and a buddy had this business where like computers were starting to pop up, and we were making like non-trivial amount of money until someone said, I think the FBI could come looking for you if you do that. I'm like, I'll stop this business right now. So I shut that down. But it was fun while it lasted.
And so, okay, we're going to zoom forward a little bit. It's, I think, the day you graduate college at Berkeley, and...
Yeah, so I was one of those guys where I took organic chemistry one summer at Berkeley. I took biochemistry the next summer, and I took MCAT study for the next summer. So I did 4 years of college. I did not have a summer break. And my idea was to take the hardest class you're going to have to take next year over the summer, one class, get the A, and the next year you can take... you don't have to take all these hard classes. So I minored in history, philosophy, and music at Berkeley, majored in anatomy and physiology. So I wanted to like diversify a little bit of
pretty chill.
Yeah, kind of fun. I was at this graduation party at this restaurant bar, and I was telling this girl I'm off going to med school. next year. And she's like, really? You did 4 years straight of college, and you know that you're going to do 4 years straight of med school, and then you're going to do 3 years straight of residency, and then you're going to get a job, and you're going to have to climb the ladder. And she goes, don't you want to take some time off? Like, no way. I'm like, I'm going. And she goes, she wrote down, pre-internet, by the way, she wrote down a number, pre-cell phone, and she said, call this number tomorrow. You should think about taking some time off. There's a program that Harvard has that's a 1-year program. It's not the Peace Corps, which is 2 years. I'm like, yeah. So I woke up in the morning, kind of hungover, pulled this piece of paper out of my pocket. I'm like, oh yeah, that girl gave me a number. And I called up Harvard on a whatever day it was, and I said, hey, they said, look, we don't need any more English teachers abroad. And I said, well, I can teach chemistry, physics, and biology. That was what I was actually teaching graduate level. I was teaching the students because I was getting good grades. And so they said, well, that's interesting. We need some science teachers, but there's only 3 countries that are accepting science teachers. It's Kenya, Costa Rica, and China. And but you have to apply. The deadline's today. So I filled out all the applications, did the interviews the same day, and then I did my Eurail trip like everybody does. Not everybody, but after college, and I went off and I was in Florence at the Piazza di San Michelangelo. I called my mom to see if I'd gotten into any medical schools yet, and if I had gotten into this program. And I found out the same day that I got accepted to Georgetown and I got accepted to Kenya. And I had to decide what to do. So I called up Georgetown and I said, is there any way you can defer my acceptance for a year? I'm going to go teach chemistry, physics, and biology in rural Western Kenya in 1989. And Georgetown gave me the pass, and I came home, got my immunizations, and was wound up in a small town called Kitale, where I spent 8 weeks in an intense 8-hour-day Swahili class, where I learned how to learn Swahili because I had to teach chemistry, physics, and biology in Swahili. Yeah, that was fun. I just found my Swahili lesson books the other day in my cellar. So that was there I was out in the middle of Africa. And by the way, they had never seen a white person before. There was no electricity, no running water, and no vehicles. This was like, if you ever saw the movie Out of Africa, like I was in the, like high on a plateau at the end of it. It was beautiful, by the way. It was overlooking Lake Victoria, and you could see. But it was, every day was Tuesday. I mean, there was no different days. I mean, it was a lot of hard work and toil and
right.
Yeah, so.
And one of the things I think you'll see in a lot of your work is, there's a human element in the work. There's a humanity in the work. And I know you mentioned one of the pieces of advice you'd go back and give to your 24-year-old self is, take a year like this and go somewhere rural. And it sounds like it was really meaningful to you. Tell us about what that year, or a little less than a year, was like, and kind of what you learned about the world, and also maybe things that carried forward with you as you came back.
Yeah, I think, growing up in San Francisco back then, it's not like now we're Silicon Valley and it's kind of an epicenter for lots of things. Back then it was just starting to become that, but it wasn't. And what I learned was, and I think that's really instructive, is that we get kind of get caught in our own social norms and social mores of how we go through life, and we think that this is right and this is wrong, and this is the right way to do something and this is the wrong way to do something. And we all have our own sensibilities about that. But when you go somewhere else, you see that they accomplish the same thing by doing it a wholly different way, and to them it's the right way. But I would look at it and say that's not the right way to do it. And what I realized is, like, I'm going to stop thinking that my way is the right way, or the way that I know is better than theirs, and start doing things their way, and start to actually become part of that culture. Because what it makes you realize is that, like, by definition, humans are generally somewhat constrained in their beliefs. But if you kind of let that down guard down a little bit, and start to enter into other cultures and become part of other cultures, you learn a lot more about yourself than you do about the other culture. And then if you can carry that forward. And so one of the little stories that happened to me while I was there, which was kind of life-altering, I still apply this principle to everything I do today, which is, okay, so you got to imagine, I'm out in the middle. I lived in a mud hut with a thatched roof, and they were dotted all over the place. And I was the teacher of the local school. I won't tell you about the voodoo curse that was put on me and all the drama.
Although I hear Adam's going to ask that question.
Yeah, it had involved military and prisons and hospitals, and it was crazy. But I made it out alive. But so one day, so every day I wanted to cook or you need water. you'd have to walk down a somewhat perilous little 10-meter cliff, and there was a well that came out of or water that came out of the thing, and all the moms, no dads got water, only the moms, they would fill up these gigantic urns. I mean, no joke. And they'd put them on their head, and they'd climb back up this wall, and then they'd go do their stuff. And I would fill up my little bucket and try to climb back up. But so after about 4 months of living there, I don't know why, but somehow they put in a pipe with a faucet and a spigot, and they put it about 20 meters from my hut. Now, of all the places on this plateau to put it, they put it next to the Mzungu, which is Swahili for white guy. And so I think that they may have thought I had something to do with it. I had nothing to do with it. I had no idea it was coming, but it made my life easier because there was no electricity. As soon as the sun came up, or before the sun came up, all the moms would line up with their big urns, and there would be a faucet and a spigot, and with all the babies and the kids, and there'd be like a long line of like 50 mamas filling up their bucket, and I would always kind of cheat with I just wanted to brush my teeth, and I wanted a little water just to brush my teeth. So I would always cut in the front of the line. Can I fill this little cup? Of course, you're the teacher for the school. Fill up your cup. So I filled up my cup, and again, I usually had some coffee after that. So I'm not usually awake at this hour in the morning, filling up my cup. And on about the 10th or second week of filling it up, and it was dark, the sun was starting to come up, I realized that the water wasn't coming out of the faucet very fast. And then I realized, I wonder, since they've never seen a spigot before in their entire existence, that they turned it once and they let go. And they didn't actually turn it again and realized that the water would come out faster. And I just had that thought. So I looked at the woman and I said in Swahili, and I don't remember exactly the words to say it again in Swahili, but I said, hey, I'm going to show you something. I was really proud of myself. I said, did you know that if you turn this, and I turned it like 3 times, and the water came flying out and filling up the thing much faster, and like the first 5 ladies in line were like, whoa, what's that? And it was clear that they didn't know that, right? And so I was feeling awfully proud of myself. And then the woman at the front of the line looked at me with her big smile and the space between her teeth. She put it right back to where it was. And she said, what's the rush? And I was like, okay. And what I realized is that water represented work. It was cooking, it was cleaning, it was laundry, it was, and this was social hour. This was time to hang out with the ladies. Like, this was the time to hang. And I was like, I walked away from that going, life lesson here somewhere. I've got to, like, what just happened? And what I realized is that we, in our society, the God is efficiency. Like, that's what we pray to. Like, how do we become more efficient, faster, better, cheaper? But the truth is that humanity doesn't operate under an efficiency rule. Like, being with people and socializing, there is no efficiency to that. It is only quality when you're doing it in an analog way. We have Facebook. We think we can be efficient by communicating one to many, and we can, but the quality goes way down. So it kind of created in me this kind of like these tensions of, where do you stop trying to be efficient and focus on quality? And if being less efficient costs more, is the benefit of the quality worth it? And the answer is usually yes. But we all get stuck on efficiency in everything we do, and we stop to realize that there's this thing called quality and humanity that we like. It's our food. Communications with other people is the one.
And you can see that probably in your life with the things you've created.
So. Everywhere I look, I try to see I look at the efficiency quality quotient of everything. Like, that's the lens with which I look through things.
So you fast forward again a little bit. You leave medical school. You have this really unusual first year out of medical school, and then you invent something that we all know, and it's become part of kind of pop culture now. So
yeah,
talk about that.
It's not easy being a trendsetter. Kidding. So in 1997, in San Francisco, when I'd finished my training and I was looking for a job to get out of internal, HMOs were on the big upswing, and it was like San Francisco was the epicenter for HMO medicine. It was a new thing. Doctors were like freaking out. Nobody knew what this thing was, and doctors were being divided and conquered and paid less, but there was a Federal Trade Commission antitrust lawsuit by the government against the big medical group that was the big HMO group, because they had too many covered lives, and they looked like a monopoly. So I couldn't get a job at the local IPA because they couldn't take any more doctors until they proved to the federal government that they weren't a monopoly. And my dad was on the board of the IPA. He was the chief of surgery at the hospital. He was like a big cheese. And I literally couldn't get a job in San Francisco. I was offered jobs in Bakersfield, Fresno, and Modesto, and I was like, no. I want to work in San Francisco. So there was an older doctor who was about 80 years old in the financial district, which was far, far away from the hospital where the locus of medicine was. And he said, hey, come work with me for a year. I'll pay you just a little bit more than you made as a resident, so I'm not going to pay you that much. You're going to take all weekend calls, and I'm going to take a week off a month, and you're going to cover the whole practice for that week a month. But in 1 year, I'll retire, and the whole thing is yours. And so I was like, okay, like I could do that. Like,
Of course, this thing finds you, which is the best part.
yeah, I was like, all right, cool. And so I was a cheap date. You know, I had a little Alfa Romeo Spider Veloce convertible and a dog and like a cheap little apartment. And so on month 11, I was licking my chops, ready to take over this practice. And I said, hey, David, let's put together a transition plan. Because he had like 10, not 10, but maybe 6 or 7 staff and a big office and leases. And, you know, there's like a lot of stuff to start communicating and doing. And he said, you know, I've been thinking that maybe we could, you know, I'm just not ready to retire yet. So maybe we could do this for another year or 2. But I'll pay you more. And I looked at him. I was like, wait, what? I thought we had a deal. And we had it on, it wasn't a formal contract. You know, my dad was all about handshakes and integrity and, you know, do what you say you're going to do. And I looked at him, I said, are you going to renege on our deal? And he goes, well, I just want to renegotiate it. I'm like, I don't want to renegotiate it. I want you out, it was nice. I was like, I think it's time for you to retire. And like, there's a path for you and a path for me. And he's like, no, I'm not ready to retire. And I was like, well, what do you mean? And then I started to get angry. And I was like, are you really going to like not be a man of your word? Is that what I'm hearing? Are you going to renege on this? And he's like, I just don't want to retire. So I'm not going to retire. And I had no leverage. Like I was like 1 year out of school. I was like, and I grabbed my bag and I walked out the door. And I basically quit. And I walked outside going, oh shit, what did I just do? Like, because I can't get a job in this town as an internist. This is before the primary care crunch. Like there was primary care doctors all over the place back then. And so I walked down the street having an existential crisis. I called my dad and he's like, you did what? And he just got mad at me and he said, what are you going to do? I'm like, I don't know. Maybe I'll go to business school. And I don't know. Maybe I'll, like, I was literally thinking of applying to Stanford Business School or just doing something. So I walked into a little cafe on the way home that I passed every day, but on this particular day I decided, like, since I had nothing else to do, I'd sit in this cafe and like ponder what I was going to do with my life. And I happened to walk into a cafe that was attached. It was the cafe of the Mandarin Oriental Hotel in downtown San Francisco, which I had never been in before. I didn't even know what it was. So I sat down and ordered some tea because it was a, Mandarin, and I was sitting there drinking my tea, just really not knowing what I was going to do, trying to think about what I was going to do. And I had a line of sight to the concierge desk, which was across the room. And I saw all these people coming and going with their fancy luggage and their little dogs and their things and their fancy clothes. And I was like, huh, where am I? And I realized I was in a 5-star hotel. That was the only 5-star hotel in San Francisco. So being the curious guy that I am and asking too many questions that drives a lot of people crazy, I walked up to the concierge, said, excuse me, but who do you call when somebody at your hotel gets sick? And she looked at me and she said, who are you? I said, I could be the guy that you call when somebody gets sick. And she said, she goes, you're a doctor? And I looked like I was 12 at the time, because it was a long time ago. Oh yeah, I'm a doctor. And she said, well, with all due respect, doctor. And she was wearing like the clay door lapels. She was a 5-star concierge at the top of the concierge game at a 5-star hotel. So she was kind of a baller in that world. And she looked at me and she says, with all due respect, doctor, this is a 5-star hotel, and everything we do here is 5-star. From the linens, to the lunches, to the limos, like it's all right. She goes, I may be 1-star smart, but everything we do here is 5-star service. She goes, you're a doctor, if you are, so you're probably 5-star smart, but your industry is 1-star service. And if you want to be the doctor to my guests, who are presidents of nations, senators, Fortune 50 CEOs, movie stars, famous people, like this is a very expensive property. and they expect 5-star everything. So you can't deliver your 1-star service to my people. And I said, well, why don't you teach me how to be a 5-star service guy then? Because I don't got anything else to do right now. I didn't really tell her that I had nothing to do, but it was true. And I didn't. And I was kind of curious, like, well, you know, hospitality, hospitality. Like, how hard, you know, how different could they be? Oh, are they different, right? We know they're different. So she basically took me under her wing after she called up the hospital to make sure I was really a doctor and my dad was really surgery, and kind of credentialed me and said, look, here's the deal. And by the way, 1998, I said, I will give so pager, cell phone, pagers were still big back then. I said, you'll have my pager number. I promise that I will call you back within 10 minutes of any page. But here's my cell phone number. I will endeavor to answer it every time and never have to go to voicemail, 24 hours a day. Again, I had nothing else to do. She goes, okay, good. And she goes, and I said, and I'll give it to all the patients. I was actually texting back then, which nobody was. So I was probably one of the first doctors to ever give out my email, cell phone, and text with patients in 1998, right? People still don't want to give out their email, but I was doing it back then because I didn't have to worry about what could happen. Like, what could conceivably happen? Somebody would call me and I'd get business. And that was good. So I started making house calls. So I bought a little Vespa scooter, because I used to live in Italy, and I got a little doctor bag, and I was making house calls to the Mandarin, and I would charge a couple $100, and I would follow up, and I would, like, if they had to go to the ER, I'd go with them, or I'd like organize their care, because I knew everybody at the hospital. And now that's not going to make a proper income, but it wasn't bad. And after doing it for like a month, I'm like, like I got about a call or two a week, and I got to meet like these crazy famous people that you're like, whoa, like the Prime Minister of Japan, and like all these movie stars and basketball players and baseball players. And then I said, So I walked up to the Ritz-Carlton, or I scootered over to the Ritz-Carlton, and I walked up to the concierge desk, and I said, who's the doctor that you call when somebody gets sick here? And they said, who are you? And I said, I'm the doctor to the Mandarin. And which is the only 5-star hotel. They said, really? So they called down there, and then one thing led to the other, and I got to be the doctor to the Ritz, and then the St. Regis, and I ran the table in San Francisco. And by 2000, and I also got other businesses. So Lufthansa airline, like people heard about this guy that was a doctor that was available that could prevent you from going to the ER. He'd come to your house. He'd come to your office. I eventually pitched up an office in San Francisco, so I have a place for people to go. But by 2001, it was 7 doctors working with me, and we were like running, and we had all these clients. And the epiphany is like people will pay for a good experience. That's what people will pay for. We do it all day long, right? But in medicine, we somehow think that it's paid for because I paid insurance. But let me be really clear: insurance is a financial hedge. It is not a care instrument. Don't let anybody think or convince you that insurance cares for you. They care about their profits and they care about their losses. That's all they care about. They will talk to no end about how much they care, but you have insurance in case something bad happens. That's it. And it's a pain in the neck to even deal with them. So I was like, okay, I'm not insurance, I'm kind of assurance. Like I will, you can call me up and I'll be right there and I'll hook you up and I'll fix you up and I'll try to prevent you from going into fortress medicine and getting medicalized. So anyway, of course, you guys know what happened in September of 2001. A, the market crashed, and B, the September 11th happened, and nobody traveled. And my business went from I think we were doing a couple $1 million a year to zero very quickly. And I had to lay off doctors. And so I went through a kind of a boom bust cycle. And it was just kind of me. At the end, it was just me. Still doing house calls to some of my existing clients. But it was a really humbling lesson because I was riding this wave. And by the way, I was taking care of a lot of these internet. The internet, by the way, it turned on in 1995, 6, 7. So this thing that we all take for granted now was a new thing, and there was all these kids minting money and becoming, Internet 1.0, the first wave. These people making millions and billions, and the young guys, they were my age, and I was like, you didn't even go to medical school. What? You don't deserve that. Anyway, so I was taking care of, a lot of these guys that were, whatever.
We won't name them, but
we won't name them. We won't name them. So the internet busted, they all lost their money, nobody traveled, like I was out of business basically. But I still had my scooter and my doctor bag. Then I was like, you know what? I don't like being at the mercy of the market, and like international events can affect my business. How do I get out of that world? And how do I create a subscription business? Like I'd rather be on a subscription where the only reason why people are going to leave is because I'm not doing a good job. It's on me. So that's when I said I'm going to start doing concierge medicine. That's what they call it today. I didn't call it that. We didn't have a name back then, 2001. And it turns out that I thought that there's going to be a whole new field that's going to open up over the next 20 years, and there's going to be a Scion and a Toyota and a Lexus, and there's going to be a whole different set of verticals in this space of concierge medicine, whatever you want to call it. There was no name for it. So I said, well, if I'm going to do that, I'm just going to go be at the highest end because I've been doing this 5-star stuff. So I'll just go to the highest end of this market, and I'll plant my flag and be really expensive and see if anybody pays. Like, you just don't know. It's the market, right? There is no insurance involved here. So this is what people are willing to pay for. I did have a good reputation because like I had a lot of clients that were of that ilk. And so literally this one guy called, I'm not going to mention his name, you all know who he is, big internet entrepreneur guy. He goes, hey, you took care of me at the Mandarin a couple years ago when I was doing my IPO. He actually did make a lot of money. And he said, I want you to be my doctor. Can you be my doctor? And I'm like, yeah. He said, how much does it cost? I said $10,000. Just pulled it out of my ear. Like I just because, but that's for the year. That's all in for the year. And if he had to come in 20 times, like it would be all inclusive of everything. And I wouldn't charge another nickel for anything. He's like, great, I'll be right down. I was like, really? And he's like, should I bring a check? I'm like, yeah, sure. And so he this is about the first time I've ever mentioned the price, but hope this is on social media. So
it will be, I think.
Oh, shit. Anyway, so he signed up, and it enabled me to say, okay, now I can design healthcare the way a patient wants it, not the way I want it, but the way a patient wants it. Because now I have no insurance contracts. I've got I'm under no Medicare rules. I opted out of Medicare. I like screw the system. It is broken and flawed, and it's a quilt. It's not even a healthcare system. It's a series of patches, and we're building one cool patch on top of a bad patch, hoping that somehow the rest. It's a hairball. You can't comb it. You just can't. And everyone's building technology to comb the hairball, and you can't comb hairballs. So I thought I would go and try to redesign the experience of a patient who is sick, concerned, and there's problems, and through the lens of me, the doctor, that wants to have a good experience too. So I don't know if you guys all know what accountable care organization is, an ACO, which is here's a bunch of money, take care of the patient. That's all you get. So I basically did that. I was like the first ACO too, but I was a one-man ACO, and now they're doing it nationally and all over the place. And what it meant was I lose money if I take bad care of a patient because I have time risk. I don't have financial risk because they have to have insurance that will pay for the blood test and the MRI and everything else, right? So essentially, I had to be really smart and use evidence to make my decisions, and had to have long conversations about the pros and cons of everything that we do, the risks, the benefits, and oftentimes, to quote Voltaire, the art of medicine is to keep your patient in a good mood while nature takes its course, right? And the truth is that rule applies a lot because we often just do stuff because it's there, and we don't realize that. Like I just had a patient 2 months ago that came in with severe groin pain. Like the guy's ready to kill himself because it won't stop. And it turns out in 2009, a doctor offered him some testosterone. It was a good idea, right? They were pitching it in the drug reps. Hey, try some testosterone. So he tried it. He then stopped it, because that doctor retired, and he had this huge testosterone crash. He developed a pelvic pudendal neuralgia. I'm like, son of a bitch! Like that guy should have never got the testosterone in the first place. It was not. He had normal testosterone levels, but the guy's like, it's not a bad idea. Boost your strength and your virility. So we don't realize that what we do, these little things, these tests that we do, and the things that we do, they all have long-term downstream consequences. So the best thing is sometimes not to do anything and really make sure that the thing doesn't go away on its own, or just monitor it closely. So I've designed this practice now that that I brought on board a pediatrician and a naturopathic doctor, so we take care of families. And our phones are always on, and we still make house calls, but because we take care
Now
of,
in 3 cities.
and
right?
now we have an office in LA, one in Silicon Valley, one in San Francisco, and the thing just keeps growing. And by the way, if you want to have a laugh, go to my website, privatemedical.org. Okay, there's nothing on it. It is a blank website, pretty much. Because all these doctors, these concierge doctors, like they market, like I've got the beautiful pictures and look at me, and I'm like, you know what? Like I'm going to stand on the quality of what I do, not on the marketing. And we're growing like 20% a year for the last 10 years, and it's amazing.
So you have private medical.
Yeah.
Set it up, right? And then a couple years forward. It's 2007, and there's something that makes you have this idea for HealthLoop. So tell us about that.
So in 2007, this lady came in to see me. She was 70 years old, cough, fever, shortness of breath, and she looked ill. You can tell when someone's ill, and I was like, ooh, she looked really ill. So I put my stethoscope on her chest, and it was clearly pneumonia. I said, look, here is this great antibiotic. There's a 97% chance it's going to cure you, but the 2-3% chance it doesn't, you could die. So the risk is big if it doesn't work. So here's my cell phone number. Call me if you're not getting better, because I would want to know as soon as we knew that to maybe add another antibiotic, put you in the hospital, something. And so the phone rings 7 days later, and it was the emergency room, and it was the doctor going, hey, your patient's here, and she is really bad. We're putting her up to the ICU on a ventilator, and she's got a 50-50 chance of making it. And I remember sitting in my chair going, oh, damn it. It was like a total fail. And I was like, why didn't she call me? Like, I made it so easy. I gave her my cell phone. I answered my cell phone. And then the next thought was, well, shame on me. Why didn't I call her? Why didn't I check in with her? And the epiphany, and so then there's something called, you guys all know what empathy is, but there's cognitive empathy. And normal empathy is where you look at someone and you go, yeah, I can feel, I feel what you're feeling, and bond with empathy. Cognitive empathy is where you say, I'm going to try to be you. I'm not going to try to feel what you're feeling. I'm going to try to be you, and like get out of your own body and become somebody else. So I tried to do this cognitive empathy with that woman who's now in the hospital. Before she went in the hospital, I was trying to like be her for 7 days, and I was thinking, okay, she's in bed with the fevers and chills. She's sick and miserable and really bad. And every day she's waking up and asking herself a question, which is, am I better or worse than yesterday? Doctor wants to know. Or am I the same? And every day she probably said, and if she's worse, she'll call me. But if she's the same, she's not going to call me. And if she's better, she's not going to call me. Right? So every day went by, she was the same, she was the same, she was the same, and then she fell off the cliff. And my epiphany was, so 2 out of the 3 of her choices are not going to call me. So there's only 33% chance she's going to call. But the truth is, I want that to be closer to 70%. Because the same, so should be a minus a half. And I scored better +1, worse -1. And so I said, I'm going to come up with empathy codes. Because the CPT codes and the ICD-9 codes, for those of you who knows what those are, ICD-10 codes now, these are codes that we put in the EMR slot machine and hope we get paid. Like that's what those things are. Like nobody knows what happens when you put combinations in. It's like, oh, I got paid nothing. And then you got to fight with the insurance company that doesn't care about anything but trying to keep the money in. So I thought that the healthcare system didn't honor the patient in any way of anything that they did. So I would try to do that by creating empathy codes. And my 3 empathy codes were, I'm really concerned about you, I'm kind of concerned about you, and I'm not that concerned about you. And every day, so I opened up an Excel spreadsheet, I would call patients up that I was really concerned about, same, better, worse. They'd answer the question, I'd score it. If they said better,
This is like
I would
same year, like right after this.
every day I would call them. If I was really concerned, I'd call them every day. If I was kind of concerned, I'd call them every other day. If I wasn't that concerned, I'd call them every 3 days. But if I called them on the 3rd day and they said I'm better, I'd take them off the list.
Right.
So I would try to move people off this list. And so then one day, this patient of mine who just sold his company, some software company, to AOL, and I was telling him about how challenging it was to, like, when I would go on vacation to hand the spreadsheet over to my partner, they're like, dude, what is this thing? It's crazy. I had annotations and notes. And he said, well, why don't you turn that into software? I'm like, okay, just because I'm a Silicon Valley, just because I'm a doctor out here doesn't mean I have to start a software company. And he said, well, I just think that asynchronous proactive communication is better than synchronous trying to get because you call and they wouldn't answer, and then you meet them where they are and they can answer whenever they did. So I was like, okay, how do I do that? Build because now the software was moving so quick back in 2000. Like what platform? And it's like, so he said, well, the guy just made a couple $1 million. This programmer, why don't you hire him? So I took this guy for a steak dinner. Mistake number one, I offered him 50% of a thing to build a thing. And he's like, I'll take 50% to build your thing. And I was like, okay. I said, I don't really think it's going to go anywhere, but we'll see what happens. So we Skyped every other night after I put my kids to bed. And I told him what I wanted to do and how it was going to work. And after 1 year, we tested it in my office. And patients would get an email. Well, I'd ask the patient, would you like the best outcome possible, the fastest? Yes or no? And everybody says, of course. I said, good. Me too. Here's how we're going to get it. You're gonna check your email every day. That's what you're going to do. And you do it anyway. But you're going to get one from me. And when you get one from me, there's going to be, all you have to do is one click in your email, and that's it. And the email said, Dr. Shlain wants to check in with you. That was the subject line. And by the way, subject lines are really, really important. And we don't, I tell everybody in my office, if there's like 3 replies, you have to clear the subject line and make a new one. You can't have it re. And it's a rule that we have in our office, because then you look sloppy. And oftentimes the third re is about something else. So update the person through the subject line what this is about to make it more textual. So the patients will get an email. Dr. Shlain wants to. First time they ever got that email, like patients they still don't get it. And then in the email it says, how are you doing today? And then I'm the same. It was a link. I'm better, which is a link. And I'm worse, which was a link. And so there's no HIPAA, there was no PHI.
All your patients.
Everybody.
Every patient.
And then they would click if they clicked same, it would there was a big thing that was attached to that link, which was identified them, but not their problem. So there's no PHI. This is when HIPAA was starting to make noise. And then at the end of every day, I would see a graph of all my patients and how they were trending. And if they turned red, I would call them and say, I need to see you, or like, what's up, and we need to chat, or I could use it as a little communication tool. Anyway, I gave a talk in Nashville about this at some conference, and just like this cool thing that I had done.
This is like 08-ish.
Yeah, 08, 9, 8, 9, and then this guy said, hey, we're doing a white paper through this thing called the Hope Street Group, and we want to have somebody in Silicon Valley talk about technology and healthcare, so could you help us write this white paper? And I didn't know who the group was. I had never heard of these guys. And meanwhile, I'm like, the list of the 8 authors of this white paper are like the head of the Cleveland Clinic, the head of the Mayo Clinic, some Harvard guys. I was like, holy smokes, like I'm not like worthy of this group. Like these are all like major academics writing a proper white paper. I'm just like a goofball in San Francisco who built this thing, And so anyway, I got on these conference calls, and then we had to go to Washington, D.C. at the Henry J. Kaiser Family Foundation at this big thing. I had to present the findings of this, my section of, and I just talked about HealthLoop as like, the last mile of healthcare, which is follow-up is more important than anything else. Like the world we live in today is, hey, call me if you're not better. Like, and doctors like, no news is good news, right? But news is data. So you tell anybody that no data is good data, and I want to meet them, So, but we still live in this world that no news is good news. And the truth is no news is no news. Good news is good news, and bad news is bad news. And so, at the end of that presentation, where I kind of did some screenshots and showed them at work, it was a rainy thing. I just wanted to get home, and I was literally the last guy out of that thing. And this guy says, "Can I take a cab with you?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure." And he says, "You need to turn that into a real company, and I'm going to write you a $500,000 check, and we're going to turn that into a real company." And I was like, "Who the fuck are you? Like, what? Really?" And his name was Ted Mizell. I don't know if any of you guys know him at Avia. And so he's like, yeah, and we're going to build a team around this. I know how to build teams around great ideas. I was like, okay. I said, but I'm a pretty busy doctor, and I've like got 4 kids, or 3 at the time, 2 at the time. But it was like they were just keep coming, and it was busy. So I just couldn't fathom starting a software company while I'm trying to build my practice and creating a basketball team. Yeah. So anyway, so he then kind of helped me put some bowl around the Jell-O, and then after 1 year, the biggest issue was this.
By the way, I've never heard that description before. That's a great one. Bowl around the Jell-O.
Yeah, it is a good one. But you have to like I had to get out of this 50% deal I had with this co-founder,
right?
Which was like a nightmare because he's like, dude, I built it. I'm not going to give you the code. It turned into one of those things. I'm like, really, dude? So that was like one of the lessons learned. Like, how do you how do you start off on the right foot and set expectations? And I tell people today, like, vesting schedules should not be time-based. They should be performance-based. I don't care how long you've been here. If you haven't done anything, you shouldn't get anything. So the way I do it is with when I advise companies now, and I advise many, like, give someone a stock grant and make like 20% of it time-based and 80% of it performance-based. Because like, you're going to get stuck by giving out a lot of equity for things that didn't happen the right way. Now, nobody does that, but I do. And I talk to lawyers like, no one does that. I'm like, yeah, just because no one does it doesn't mean you can't or shouldn't. And by the way, you need to be smart about these things, because at the end of the day, you'll just get fleeced and own nothing and get kicked out. Because that's what the investors want to do. I mean, not the good ones don't, but the founder-friendly ones don't. But a lot of these guys, they give you a bag of money, they want two back, and they don't care about you and your life and everything else. I mean, the non-founder-friendly ones. So you got to be careful of the venture guys. I mean, I know all the good ones.
Any bad ones you want to name?
No.
So, okay. So it's 2009, you got this thing going, and you say, hey, I'm going to turn it into a real company. So, that's where I think some of the entrepreneurs that matter are. They have an idea, something worked, and they want to make it real, and they want to scale it. And so, what was that first year? What was that second year like? Like, how'd you hire the first 10 people? How'd you raise money beyond from Ted in a cab? It's such a small world. We're having dinner with Ted tonight, so now I'll get
yeah, he was the catalyst.
Yeah, but what was that like?
I think that you have to really believe, like, at your core, that what you're doing is good for humanity in some way. I mean, especially in healthcare, I think that if you're doing some fintech company and you're just trying to make money, I don't know that your value system's intact when it comes to like helping people. But some of them are, like the micro lending for poor countries. There's a lot of good guys out there. But you have to believe it, and then you have to go out and test it and validate it in the market a little bit. You got to make sure it actually works and people like it. And like, a lot of people have ideas, but they haven't really market tested it. And you actually have to go out and market test things. And that means asking a lot of questions and meeting a lot of people and being a little bit pushy. But so I just said, look, I mean, it was really easy. It's called a follow-up tool. It follows you after you leave the doctor's office. It was very easy to explain. Everybody got it. It wasn't hard to explain.
To doctor's offices or practices?
To investors.
To investors, okay.
So what I did is I was like, this isn't like, I don't think this is ready for a real raise. So I just went to friends and family. Hey, can you put me 25 grand, 50 grand? My sister gave me 25. And Ted talked to a couple of his people, and then we got a board member who was like a professional VC to help out, and he put in some money. And so we just did like these little raises, like, let's raise just enough to get us to the next milestone. Let's not raise too much, because like, I don't want to let all these people down if we don't get to the next milestone, and let's make the milestone pretty clear on what it.
What'd you think about the first, like, what were the first 3 milestones once you decided to go for it?
Well, one of the first milestones is, could we get doctors to use this and actually put it in their office and use it? We knew that patients loved it. Like that's but they're not going to pay for it, because patients think that insurance is supposed to pay for things. But they don't, in general, as you all know. So we knew we couldn't go there. And so we had to ask doctors to do it. And so this one urologist buddy of mine said, I'll try that. So he tried it, and he liked it so much, he invested in it. And then I showed it to an orthopedic surgeon friend of mine, and he tried it. And by the way, it used to be same, better, worse. But these guys wanted to ask very specific questions over time. And so, for example, if I break your kneecap right now and my kneecap right now, we will heal at the same time.
Which I'm hopeful does not happen.
I won't, but if I break everybody's kneecap in here, we will all heal at pretty much the same trajectory. Now, we've never had a broken kneecap, so we don't know what to expect on day 3, 5, 10, 20, 90. We don't. And we're going to go through all the existential concerns about this broken knee and how's it healing. But I can tell you, I know exactly how every broken knee is going to heal. And it's predictable, it's knowable, and it's very routinized. So we created the ability for doctors to tell people what they needed to know on certain days, and then ask them certain multiple choice questions about how they were doing, so that we could actually give them information just in time in little bite-sized pieces, and then ask them how they're doing. But like, were you able to walk up a flight of stairs? Do you have a fever? So it wasn't just same, better, worse. We would get kind of more granular. And so HealthLoop is like an authoring tool that doctors can.
And doctors would create their own questions, or you'd have all of these things?
Well, we didn't. I mean, it was me and another guy and a programmer and a woman who used to do management consulting to doctors. So she understood how the operation of doctors' offices worked. So we really got in that weeds, and I realized that people liked it, people used it, and the people that liked it wanted to invest. And then they would tell their friends. So it was like, okay, I think I'm onto something. So I think that you really have to believe yourself. But if you haven't built a prototype, like build a prototype on a shoestring. That's advice number one, and get it out there and see what the feedback is. And so that was our main milestone. The second milestone is would the doctors continue to use it after 3 months, right? Everyone's got like fatigue of new things, and there's shiny object syndrome all over the place, and so we did that, and then okay, we raised a little bit more money, and then we hired another guy, and we by the way, Craigslist. That's how I found people.
Yeah.
I literally met people at cafes, and like again, I was a busy doctor raising a family, and this was like, but I had this one woman, Cheryl Toth, who's no longer with the company, but she was like Superwoman. I mean, she literally would go to the doctor's offices, get it implemented. She'd interview people, and so she was kind of the COO, if you will, 4-person.
Sure.
But we had a lot of great feedback from Ted and other people.
And then how would doctors pay for it, or how would they make money from it?
So we charged them. What did we charge them? Like $200 a month. I think that was a subscription fee for it. And what we found is that that patients would tell their friends, "Oh my God, this doctor's using this cool communication tool." So it actually bolstered their reputation. And in the surgical world, it's all referral based, right? And where it used to be you got your referrals from another doctor, now you got ZocDocs and people like asking their friends on Facebook who's the best shoulder guy. Like the world of referrals has gone from like doctor to patient to patient, I'm gonna go figure it out on my own. So we had this kind of tool that could like make doctors look like superheroes, because we gave them a tool where they could check in with their patient every day, or frequently. So we were able to do it kind of that way, and then eventually I said, okay, we've got like 5 practices up. We've raised like $1.5 million in these Series Seed A, Series Seed A1, Series Seed A2, and we got all the way to Series Seed A5. Like we just kept raising just another like 100. We had to get to some other milestone that we thought was important. And then the last one was we had to find a CEO. And a CEO who can raise money. And who can
did you ever think about jumping in, or how did you know that?
I never wanted to be the CEO of that, because I always felt like my best value was being a doctor, and keeping my feet in the world of medicine, because I knew it's changing. And as it's changing, I have to be the guy that's feeling that change and have to understand how this product can adapt to that change. Otherwise, I'm just going to be another talking head doctor that's no longer practicing and completely disconnected from the field of medicine. And the truth is the doctors that are still practicing, like you get like the secret handshake when you're still a doctor. If once you go out into the business world and you're a chief medical officer, you're doing something else, it's not that you're not smart and doing some good stuff, but you've lost the secret handshake with the doctors because you kind of sold out to us. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but it's the truth. We're all still in the trenches of medicine, dealing with all the shit that everyone's throwing at us, whether it's insurance companies or federal regulations or IT that doesn't work. And so like I want to feel that pain, so that it informs me of how I can help.
We talked a little bit about this, right? Lately I've been talking about how, you have people working on healthcare at different levels, right?
Yeah.
A lot of times in DC, or I'd say in Silicon Valley a lot, top of the pyramid stuff, right? Let's pass one law that changes everything, or some software that changes everything. But healthcare is billions of decisions and millions of little places. And so you kind of mentioned you're at all these levels. Like you are in it, you're in the middle, and you're at the top. And so that give you a really unique perspective.
Yeah, I think that going back to like the comment I made earlier about designing my practice for patients, like it's very I've kind of come to the conclusion that there's only 3 things that matter in medicine, really. Three. There's a triad, and it's the patient, and it's the doctor, and it's the data, right? Those are the 3 things that are all moving through time, that need to like figure itself out so the patient get the best outcome. Because the goal is the patient get the best outcome. So whatever you're building, ask yourself, how is this improving the outcome, right? And I know that a lot of cool stuff that's being done here at Matter, everyone's trying to like analytics and find the needle in the haystack and get the better outcome. There's a lot of safety tools, and so that's I think why we try to do things in health IT, is it's mission driven, it's not just profit driven. But when you think about healthcare, and I got into a kind of an argument with Secretary Burwell at her office at a roundtable, where she was asking everybody, all these CEOs of all these big companies, she goes, I have 1 year and 10 days left in office. How can we empower the consumer? And there was all these like CEOs of huge companies, and I raised my hand, somewhat regretting it now, but not really. And I said, I've never seen a consumer in the ICU. So I don't know that there are consumers in healthcare. And she goes, what? I said, well, like a consumer is somebody that has free will. They have unlimited options. They can drink this, they can drink the unlimited options, and they have a full sense of control, and when they buy something, they're adding something to their life that they didn't have before. And so consumers are all oriented around people that are excited to trade in resources that they've earned for something new. I said, patients, first of all, don't have free will. They have tethered will. They have to make a choice.
Right.
They actually have to outsource their trust to somebody else. They have to outsource their sense of control to somebody else, which makes them vulnerable. And when you're vulnerable in healthcare, where there's existential stuff in the background, you're anxious. So patients have an anxiety mindset. They don't have an excitement mindset. And they have limited options. And I can go on and on about the difference between patients and consumers. So I think as you're designing something, so everyone's trying to figure out how do you make the Apple Store for healthcare, and how do you make the the design principles for everything in the world that you use, like we all use, no one's a patient right now, active patient anyway, like the things that I call it, we need to design for anxiety. And there are design principles. I'm actually on the plane out here, came up with 30 design principles that if you're going to design for patients and doctors, you must adhere to these principles. Otherwise, you're going to gamify something, or you're going to do something that people don't connect with. Nobody wants to go into healthcare. Nobody wants to be a patient, right? There's only three things, you guys will get it, but there's only three things where you actually will pay someone to get rid of something for you. The garbage man? Are you a consumer of the garbage man? The termite guy? Are you a consumer of the termite guy? The divorce lawyer? Are you a consumer? And doctor. So you're in a field with these three other categories. As a doctor, you're in a field where people are coming to you to give you money to get rid of something. Their nausea, their cancer, their pain, whatever it is, their diabetes. They're not there to get something. They're there to get rid of something. And so you have to really internalize that again, I'm talking about healthcare where the rubber meets the road, where doctors and patients exist, not if you're building IT in the background, but you have to remember, nobody wants to be here. If you're designing or building something, nobody wants to be here.
Right.
So you have to really think about the
Right.
bits and pieces.
I think you make a really good point. I've seen this. You take consumer product or design people, and everyone's like, oh, engagement. Let's get lots of people engaging. And it's very different than Snap, right? It's not the point of this.
Snap is fun. Healthcare's not fun. So you're trying to do, it's
right.
as simple as that.
No, it's a very, very insightful point, actually. Okay, as you guys see, it's so hard to finish the story because you just have so many. So we're gonna just go into some Q&A, and then we've commandeered him here, so you can attack him afterwards for all the other fun stories you didn't share on stage. But any comments on the revisions to the ACA and the CBO scoring that came out today?
Oh my God, what a disaster. I just saw that before I came on. So am I being filmed? Yeah. So I actually worked a little bit with the White House on the ACA and policy level.
The former administration, right?
Former administration, but I actually just got reached out to by the current administration, interestingly enough, to give them, they didn't know, so I had to tell them what health policy was. It was kind of funny. Who would have thought it was that hard? So I do think that the truth is that value-based care is not going away. It will still march forward because hospitals cannot continue to charge 18% increases every year. The whole thing's going to collapse. So everybody knows they got to start re-engineering all their systems to outcomes. And my short version of what the ACA really is, hey guys, your income should be proportionate to your outcome. And it's as simple as that. And I got in an argument with a CEO last night of a big healthcare system who's like, yeah, we don't really have 1% margins. We can't buy that new software. I'm like, how much is your salary? How much is the executive team salary and the board salary? How much crap do you guys pay yourself so that you can't buy stuff for patients? What do you really care about? You care about your salary and yourself, not your patients, right? I just went off on this guy. I'm so sick of this stuff. And it's true. When you get personal with these guys, they don't want to lose their salary. And they're the reason why we have this problem. But I do think that they do have to engineer value. It's coming. Now, this Medicaid stuff is horrible. It's so ass backwards to have poorer and sicker people pay more. The whole purpose of insurance is to pool. So I don't think that's going to go anywhere. I think the Senate's going to hopefully kill it and turn it into something else. But I still think there's a lot of room for innovation.
Right.
It's just, remember, there's 4 people that can pay for whatever you're building, okay? It's going to be the patient, they're not going to pay, okay? It's the doctor, they're not going to pay. It's the healthcare system, they don't really want to pay. And it's the insurance company, they're not going to pay. So when you're building stuff, remember the first question, who's buying it and how much are they paying? Before you start building product phase 1, answer those questions. And the second thing is, when you start talking to someone about whether they want to buy something, say, you have to walk in and say, look, I got this cool thing, I think you're going to be interested, but I want to get to know as fast as possible. I want you to tell me no as fast as you can. Don't, because what happens is, there's a meeting, and then there's another meeting, and then there's another meeting, and you get lost in these jungles of committees, and then you get silently clubbed in some cul-de-sac, over there. And it was like 6 months and a lot of time and effort, and you're like, damn, I wish you would got to know a lot earlier. And then you have to ask them why they said no. And say, please be honest with me. Like, get to know and find out why it was a no, so you can learn that the next guy you go to or the next girl you go to, you've kind of like learned something from that thing. Right. But I still think there's opportunity. I think that, the whole healthcare act is under major assault, and I hope that we don't lose what we.
Well, thank you for taking that on. A lot of people just would have said, like, I can't answer that. So I love that.
I'm not afraid.
Okay, we're gonna fit two more questions in. Can you let's say it this way? How would you do concierge medicine, for the low-income segment? What would you need to do to make this work?
So by the way, my friend Rushika Fernanderpool at Iora Health, my friend Tony Say at Zappos started a turntable health. So there are, and then there's like a whole thing called DPC now. That's the new name for concierge medicine. That's at a lower end, which is direct primary care, which is like $25 a month.
Right.
And so this is on fire. It's happening everywhere because, you guys will pay $9.99 for an app to listen to music, but you won't pay $25 to have a doctor. Like, at some point, the scale is going to tilt where once this movement comes, because by the way, doctors are getting paid less every year by all these insurance companies and CEOs that need more money for their things and stuff. And by the way, these doctors, like, their rents go up, they have to give raises, so their costs are going up, so like, doctors are like fleeing. They have to. It's existential. They're either joining an employed thing or they're leaving medicine, which leaves us with a whole separate crisis. So it's happening. It's real. It's in more places than you think, and it's probably in your community and you didn't know it. So you just have to look.
Now this one's a personal one. Do you still love practicing medicine? When you're seeing a patient, do you love that?
100%. I really do. I think that it's the thing, it's soul food for me. Again, I'm just a problem solver. And people come to me with their problems and they're scared and they're afraid and they just want to know that someone's going to co-pilot this, land the plane and be their advocate and only have their best interest in mind. And I have one of the rules in my office is there can be no product placement of like a clipboard that says, Lyrica or a pen that says, I don't want there to be any brands in our office. This is a place, it's a safe place. There is no, and the other thing we make no money recommending, like a lot of these concierge doctors, and by the way, there's a lot of charlatans out there, they'll do bioidentical hormones and sell supplements, and they're making money on everything they recommend, which is a moral hazard, right? So to eliminate the moral hazard, we tell everybody, we will not mark anything up, we'll do everything at cost. You want a vaccine, it's at cost. I don't want to make money by giving you anything, and I don't want to trip that wire because it's a slippery slope down that wire because you can make a lot of money, and so I do think it's my connection to humanity more than anything else, and just being able to kind of help people that are in a ditch and get them out of the ditch. So I will practice for a long time.
I was going to lay it off there, but I have one more question I have to ask.
Sure.
Okay?
Yeah.
What's your view of genetics? You have kind of this interesting clientele, right? Where I bet they're interested in that topic. And so what are you telling them, and what are you doing, and how are you seeing the subject of genetics really enter decisions that you're making with individuals?
So unless it's maternity, unless it's childhood screening, unless it's cancer,
childhood screening,
prenatal screening, unless it's prenatal screening or cancer, run, basically. Run far away. The truth is, and by the way, I'm working with Harvard, the Broad Institute with their genetics program. There's a guy, Rob Green, who runs their program, and he just spun off a company called Genome Health, which I'm kind of helping them beta test it in my office because I think that that's the closest thing to something that's actionable and interesting. But the truth is we know so little that anytime, if the goal of my job and us here is to decrease anxiety in people, if you tell them they have a 32% chance of getting cancer in the next 20 years, you just increase the anxiety because there's nothing you can do about it. You could get Alzheimer's or Parkinson's too.
That's true. There's nothing you could do.
No, well, if it's cancer, so 3 leading causes of death are cardiovascular disease, cancer, and medical errors, right? So when people want to talk about longevity and genetics, I'm like, dude, I'll prevent the cardiovascular disease. I can't prevent the cancer, but I can prevent it from killing you because I can catch it early. Yeah, and if there's some genetic test that you can do to see if you have a high predisposition for a certain type of cancer, then you put them on a screening program that maps to them, not some, population health is like insurance companies and population health people take care of populations. I take care of individuals. I don't take care of populations. And the problem is that I can't, and they can't take care of individuals. So like the real holy grail is you got to have a doctor that can take care of people and population people that, you got to come together. So genetics is useful in an instance, but then you got to get to like this N of 1 medicine. And insurance companies, nobody knows how to deal with that because it blows up the bell curve. Because the bell curve is good for 80%, but what if you're on the 2 standard deviations on either side and you're the outlier? Well, that's not good for you, but it's good for everybody else, so we'll do that. So we have to get to this N of 1. So I think genetics it's getting there, and I think every year we'll learn one new thing that's interesting. But there's a lot of genes and a lot of, like we thought for a long time that the junk DNA was like, oh, junk. I remember when I was in medical school, I'm like, there's no junk DNA. Evolution didn't make junk. It's hyper efficient, this thing called the body, and everything that exists in it is really efficient, and it's really durable and resilient.
Right.
So now they realize, oh yeah, that's not junk. It actually means, we just didn't know, so we called it junk. So it's just human hubris getting in the way, and I think that our hubris with what genetics is going to be is like, it's so far away that we should not get too excited about it. And there's so many genetics companies popping up that are selling stuff that it's too complicated. We don't know enough. So I like genetics because I think it holds a promise for specific things. But broadly for everybody, run.
Well, Jordan, thank you again so much. As you see, we could have gone another hour.
What's that?
We could have easily gone another hour.
Yeah, why not?